All right, guys. Once again, I am fired up. I love recording on Fridays, which is when I record a lot of these, and Fridays is just the happiest day of the week, studies say. So let's jump right into our iTunes or Apple Podcast, as it's known these days, review of the week. So this one is from C Bell 7211. So I know who C Bell is, and he's active inside of the Facebook community. So this one's titled Great Show, 5 stars. I just recently started listening to this podcast and I love it. I've been trying to grow stronger and being a better spiritual leader in my home, and this podcast helps tremendously. Know that there are other men out there that struggle the same that I do, but keep each other accountable and always relying on God. Dan, your podcast and guests are awesome. I greatly appreciate you doing this for us. Keep it up, brother. God bless. So thank you, C Bell 7211. I appreciate that greatly. So coming up, we're going to have Scott Beebe on with us. So he's got something to live up to because apparently we have great guests on the show. Oh, before we get into that, I just want to thank everybody. The downloads since just before Christmas have gone crazy. So I don't know what changed, but all of a sudden everybody is downloading the show like crazy and jumping into the private Facebook community like crazy. So it's been really encouraging to see. And recently the podcast reviews have increased quite a bit as well. So all that said, guys, I appreciate you plugging in and appreciate you guys leading your family and stepping that up. So this conversation that we're going to have today with Scott Beebe is going to keep going from that. So if you're fired up and trying to figure out what your next moves are, this podcast definitely will help you with that. So with that said, we've got Scott Beebe on with us. I pronounced his name right because I'm a big fan of the Buffalo Bill wide receiver. So we got that going. And Scott has a awesome business on purpose, great website. If you're into marketing, his marketing is tremendous, top notch. Not all the guys that listen own a business. However, the stuff we're going to talk about will be applicable to your family. So with that said, welcome, Scott.
Dan, thanks so much. Thanks for that intro. Super kind.
Yeah, absolutely. I got introduced to you years ago. So I've known you for a long time without you necessarily knowing me by a guy named Brian McCrae, who wrote just an awesome review the other day that I appreciate so greatly. And I love the connection with you because, again, you bring so much to people's lives and what you've had to go through yourself to get to where you are and sharing that and just being intentional with growing your business and growing your family and being responsible for the spiritual leader of your house. Like, you can't have enough people like you around you and hang out with, whether it's in real life or virtually or just getting immersed in somebody's material and following them and kind of grabbing onto a guy as a mentor. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, man, like, how'd you get started in taking responsibility and deciding to do things on purpose?
Wow. Um, I guess the first place my headspace goes, I do have to tell you this too, right off the bat. Anytime that I've got an opportunity to talk about specifically things outside of our business as it relates to our family and marriage and parenting and dadhood and sonhood and all of that sort of things, I get really, really, not nervous, but cautious probably is a better word. And so I always like to make a little bit of a sort of set the groundwork and say this, that anything that I have to offer right now, all I'm doing is just sort of sharing what the playbook looks like for us right now. So we're coordinators calling plays. We're not Super Bowl champions. Where our game is not up yet. We're still, I'm at the time of this recording, I'm 46. Ashley and I've been married 23 years. And so we're way away from the final chapter of this thing by God's grace. And so I just want to make it really clear that anything I've got to share today, it has zero to do with expertise. It has everything to do with, we've been running a playbook for a while, and I'll share with you what's in the playbook. And if it's helpful, then awesome. And if it's not, then awesome. But that's what it is. So anyway, just to sort of make that distinction, that I'm happy to open up my playbook, but to let you know that we've not won the Super Bowl with that playbook yet.
There we go. There we go. Fantastic. So just to give the guys a brief look back, what was it like growing up as a kid?
So my dad is a professional engineer, particularly started out in nuclear engineering with the Navy for a few years, and then went into, did a lot of big industrial engineering, pulp and paper plants, factories, that sort of thing. And so he was with one of these big multinational firms. And so we moved around the United States all growing up. I was born in the DC area in Alexandria, Virginia, at a naval hospital. And then we moved to Charlotte, and then Houston, Texas, and then in Portland, Oregon. And then going into my 10th grade year, I don't remember what age that is, but we moved from Portland, Oregon to Greenville, South Carolina. I don't know that there's much more of an American contrast than going from the extreme liberality of Portland to the extreme conservatality. That's not a word, but the conservative nature of a Greenville, South Carolina. And so I spent my final 3 years of high school there in Greenville, went to the University of South Carolina. And then right out of there, did the most logical thing that a public university school student would do. And I went to seminary. So I went to this really conservative seminary. We ended up going there because it was the cheapest thing that we could afford. Ashley and I were just getting married, and there were some really good theological studies on the East Coast. They were just so expensive, we couldn't afford it. So we went to Fort Worth, Texas, super, super conservative seminary at the time, and still is actually. And studied there, sort of felt like a fish out of water. And so I ended up working in business while I was in school. Did not work on staff at churches or anything like that. I worked in business primarily, and did the most logical thing you do when you have a divinity master's is I went to sell drugs legally for Pfizer, big multinational pharmaceutical company that many people have heard of more recently because of the COVID vaccine. And so worked for them in their primary care division, selling drugs for a couple of years. And then I was having a really hard time trying to merge business and mission, business and sort of, business and mission. And so about 2 years into that, got an invite to come be on staff at the church that we were members of while we were in seminary back out in Texas. So we moved from Augusta, Georgia, which was my first Pfizer job, out to back the mid-cities in Dallas, Fort Worth. We're there for a couple of years. Then their strategy was sort of to plant churches around the Dallas, Fort Worth metroplex. So we, after a couple of years, went to the south side of Fort Worth, planted a church there. So all told, for about 5-6 years, I was in vocational work in the church, both as an associate pastor and then as the planting pastor of this church that we did. And oh my gosh, it was hard. The drama, the crossfire, all this stuff. There were days you just wanted to wake up and go, hey, can we just serve people that are in need and stop making ourselves the one in needs? We're just sort of serving ourselves. And so it's not bashing on the church. It's just, I got to see the inside, and it's hard. Ended up moving back to the East Coast, going back to work for Pfizer, because we got asked if we could come help somebody start a church. And I wanted to go back in business. I really missed business. But I still wasn't trying to figure out, I was still trying to figure out how to merge mission and work. And about that time, we got involved in Nigeria, 2006, a project in Nigeria, very rural town, about 7 hours southwest of the capital city. And so we started doing work there, continue to do work there, still very involved in that. I was just there right before the pandemic shut down the majority of travel, got out right before that happened, and we'll be back again this year. And so doing a lot of work there. So I was doing that voluntarily while I was working for Pfizer. And then that group that we were volunteering with asked if I'd leave Pfizer about 6-7 years in and go be the executive director. So I did that for a really small, about $500,000 annual revenue, non-governmental organization based out of Nigeria. We still lived here in the US, but I was back and forth. And then in February 27th, 2015, that thing just imploded. There was a sort of a board coup d'etat. I wasn't a board member, but I was executive director. So I had to answer directly to the board. And 8 of our 9 board members resigned on that particular day because of a whole issue that's a really long story. And so my role was a casualty of that. And I remember sitting at Abuelo's restaurant in Euless, I think it was Euless or Hearst, Texas, with one of the 8 board members who had stepped down. And we were just commiserating in 3 inches of snow that had fallen that morning. And I was about to head back to the airport and go back home with no job. I was 39, no job, married to a school teacher. And we had 3 kids who were, at the time, they would probably have been 14, 12, and 10 or something like that. Okay. And so that's what sort of launched us where we're at. And I can tell you this, Dan, for the last 20 plus years, I have been on a focused, lasered mission to try to figure out how work and mission, ministry, service, whatever, how all of that is the same, instead of this segmented, hey, Dan, you're a part of an insurance company. And as a part of an insurance company, that's awesome. But you've also got this institution over here that you can go serve with. And those two things are separate though, but don't put them together, because that, that's evil or whatever. And you look at it, and I know I'm talking a lot. This will be my last story.
So I'll jump in there, because
Yeah.
yes, so who says that that's evil?
Yeah.
Who says that?
All right. So
the world.
No particular person.
Yeah.
So a society
it's
sort of has groomed us in that.
Yeah, we got groomed into that way of thinking, and we got to separate business and in our faith life, and separate Sundays from the rest of the week and all this stuff. And when you stop for a second and just have the conversation like this, go, why am I thinking that way?
Mm-hmm.
Why? How did this come to be? How did
Mm-hmm.
we get to this point? And it was, like you said, it was grooming. It happened over a period of years, and people around us thinking that way. So anyway, yes, 100%. How do we keep that separate? No. How can we integrate and bring that in is the question. So anyway, go ahead.
Well, we jokingly came up with this a few years ago. I called it the pyramid of holiness. And so just imagine a pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid is I'm going to go into Catholicism here, but at the top of the pyramid is the Pope and Billy Graham, Mother Teresa. Like, they're at the top of the pyramid of holiness. And somewhere just below them are, doctors, teachers, emergency workers, that sort of thing. Then if you go a little bit further down, you'll get to, maybe food service workers or whatever. And then if you keep going down the pyramid of holiness, which means you get less and less holy, then you've got insurance people like you, attorneys, business coaches. And then at the very bottom are the personal injury attorneys. Like, they're the least holy or whatever. You get my point.
Right. Yeah. The tax collector.
I'm just picking on people
from back in the day.
Yeah. And we bought into that. We laugh about it, but we bought into it. And so what we do is I'll prove it. When somebody who is a regular user of vulgarity in their normal everyday life, so they're dropping S words and F words and whatever, casually, and they're not mean people, they're not rude people, just periodically. I was at a lacrosse game last night. It was a sweet mom sitting behind me and just dropping S words like all night, And so you look at that. If that same person were to sit down with a pastor, because a pastor's up the pyramid of holiness, that person would go to cuss, but immediately stop themselves and go, "Oh, I'm sorry." Why? Why are you sorry? What is special about that person that's not special about the people sitting around you in the moment when you're speaking in vulgarity? I'm not I'm not trying to say, hey, if you're vulgar, you're evil and all this. That's not my point. My point is, we sort of look at people and go, oh, we need to be on better behavior around them than we need to be on other people, because we put people on a pedestal or on this triangle. And we've got a statement now. This is what we say all the time to our clients. Life and business necessarily intersect. There is no way to segment it. Life and business necessarily intersect. And if you have any doubt in that, go back to Exodus 35. I think it's towards the end, like Exodus 35:30 or somewhere around there. And it says this: and God gave Bezalel, this Jewish guy named Bezalel, God gave Bezalel the Spirit of God, giving him great craftsmanship and skill in creating all sorts of crafts. And then for the next 5 chapters, this guy has 5 chapters, it might even actually be 6, of the Bible. All it talks about is everything that Bezalel built. He created, he built, he created. And what did he do it with? He did it with the skill that God gave him. So it's a spiritual gift. We don't think of spiritual gifts as the things we do for work, selling insurance, coaching business owners, whatever. We think of those as, I got to go do that to make the donuts so I can make money and write a check to give to poor people. That's typically our ministry mindset. Instead of going, wait a second, I run a business that has 8 people in it as full-time people, not including our clients and all the people that they touch. I have more access in the 8 people that I influence that are on our payroll, and then the 56 business owners that we directly interact with. If you add those people and their families together, that's the size of a significant church. And I'm not saying that business will fulfill the role of the church. What I am saying is that the church has had to fill the role that the business community has sort of passed off to them. And I don't know if this is going to be right, but I believe over the last couple of years with COVID, one of the things that has happened in a positive way is I think the church is being relieved of the pressure of having to shoulder by providing programs that we as community people, business people, family people should be providing ourselves, and leveraging the church to equip us to go provide that for other people.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Oh my goodness. Yeah. We're always looking for resources and ways to connect and dive in. So, wow, we've been rolling for a while. So to back up, 3 inches of snow. Where was this at? Where were you physically?
Well, it was actually in the mid cities of Dallas, Fort Worth. There was no
Right.
snow on the ground at 9 a.m. when we went into the boardroom.
Like that was a miracle in and of itself.
Yeah, it really. I mean, there were so many things around that day that are so memorable, and they're memorable not in a fun way. But I walked in at 9, no snow on the ground. Walked out at 12, and there was 3 inches of snow on the ground in the Dallas area, which doesn't get a ton. But yeah,
We were down in Dallas years ago and it was a cold rain. There was a slight bit of ice that had formed in certain places, not many. The whole entire town shut down.
yeah.
We were on
Well, the place we were going to, it's a nice Mexican place that's open all day till 11 o'clock at night or whatever. They were shutting down at 4 that day.
Yeah.
So
we
just
went
got
out
in. So
we went
could
out
leave.
at night to the main tourist place and it was closed. We found one place that was open and had about 12 people in it. And I'm looking around, I'm like, it's cold rain, people.
Yeah.
It's so 3 inches of snow in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
Like as a pivotal day in your life, I'm like, that is mind blowing to me.
Yeah. No, it was.
So where'd you go from there?
So came back home and I flew home that night, actually. So we live just north of Savannah, Georgia, near Hilton Head, South Carolina. And flew home. I was driving I-95 about 12:30 in the morning by myself. And you can just imagine all the stuff that's going on, not just that day. I mean, there was months leading up to this and you're just processing all that. I came home and that was a Friday. Monday, I had a couple buddies here locally and both of them are business owners. And I called both of them. They sort of knew what was going on. I called both of them and I said, hey, I'm going to start a business coaching firm. And they were like, oh man, that's awesome. That's great. You'll be great at that. And I said, I want to coach both of you. I want you to be my first 2 clients. And they were like, okay. I mean, they know me really well. They're like, what do you want to coach us on? And I said, well, what do you need? And we were talking back and forth. And I said, well, you're sort of talking in circles. Let me ask you a question. Do you have any idea where this ends up? This thing that you're doing? One guy at the time owned a $5 million company. The other guy at the time owned about a $12 million company. Since then, they both doubled. And they were like, no, we're just like, no, we don't have any idea. And so we started working through it and I set up a full day vision, mission, values workshop with them and they left that. And I remember 2 weeks later had a follow-up meeting with one of them to sort of walk him through what he had written out during that day. And we were sitting at his conference table and he looks across, and anybody who knows this guy would just chuckle, but he looks across and at the end he goes, well, what do we do now? Like that's more clarity I've ever had. What do we do now? And I said, well, I think we probably need to start meeting every week to make sure you implement this stuff. And he goes, done. How much? And I told him like this number that just blew my head. Right. And now I'm embarrassed to even say what it was, and he goes, done. All right. Can we start next week? I'm like, yeah. And so that's how Business on Purpose started. And then I got those 2 guys to invite a couple other guys, and those guys were like, I need this for my business too. And then it just sort of grew from there. And I mean, with a lot of hard work and a lot of intentionality, but yeah, that's what happened next.
Yeah, I joke on accident, but I'm like, no, actually, that was on purpose.
That's right.
Made 2 calls. Said,
that's right.
Here's the intention. And
yeah, I didn't sit in a chair and just wait for God to strike. Like I feel like He gave me skill set, so I put those into motion.
That's great. That's great. So, what I just heard there was, yeah, we have to pray. Yeah, we have to believe God's going to do things. Aside from that, we have to do stuff ourselves.
Yeah.
We've got to step in. So when the opportunity shows up, we've got to put our foot forward. So that's great.
Well, I've been trained in a silver bullet culture. I've been trained to look for the silver bullet. What's the one thing? There's even a great book actually by Gary Keller. What's the one thing, right? But a lot of times if I were to ask God directly, hey, God, what should I do? What's the number one thing I should do? Pray, read, connect, meditate, work. I think he would just look at me and go, yes, yes, whatever I've put in you capability to do and provided for you, yes, go do that thing. Yeah, but what's the one thing? Like if I could just, well, really what I'm asking for is a hack. I want an easy way out.
Yeah.
And I think what God will respond to us is, no, just everything that you said, just go do those things. And I love how ambiguous Jesus was. It's wildly ambiguous and yet really specific, but hey, what's the one thing? He got asked that question. What's the one
Yes.
thing? And he said, I tell you what, love God and love your neighbor. Yeah, but like, do I do that with this program or this strategy of prayer or this? Yeah. And I think he'd just look at us and go, yeah, it sounds awesome. Sounds great. But I have spent too much time looking for a silver bullet. And so we've made a decision in our business and life that we're going to go sort of a buffet approach, but go to the buffet every day and just do that thing. And so, by going to the buffet every day, that stacks up over time. And man, the law of compounding is powerful when you start to do those things over time.
Yes, absolutely. So let's just jump into your playbook. What's it look like? I know you got the business side of life as well, and we can go both. We can go business, family, and all that type thing. But yeah, let's dive into your playbook. What do you got?
Well, it's a great question. So I think the ethos of our playbook, or the shtick of our playbook, is vision, mission, values, systems, process. And I'll start from the back and move to the front, because I think everybody in their cliche mind would sort of roll their eyes at the front and go, oh yeah, vision, mission. I got that. My guess is you probably don't. But let's work back to that. Let's start with the process and the system. People have asked me before, Scott, I mean, you can't process relationship. I'm like, you can. I process my relationship with Jesus. I process my relationship with my wife. I process my relationship with our team members, and I'll prove it. My process with Jesus is in the morning at around 6 a.m. when I'm sitting at my table, reading and writing. That's a process every day. It's rhythmic. It's repetitious. Ashley and I, in our vision story, we actually have a multi-page vision story I encourage everybody to have. And in our vision story, we have written down that Scott and Ashley will have a date night once a week. We will have a quarterly overnight once a quarter. And it doesn't have to be somewhere fancy. You can go camp out if you want, whatever you want to do, but just quarterly overnight once a quarter. And it doesn't even have to be overnight if it's not. So you got to get out. And then once a year, she and I go somewhere away together. That's written in our vision. So that's a process. We wrote that in our vision story. And the reason I don't want to leave my marriage to the whim of just when I think about it is because we'll get people that tell us all the time, hey, we don't need a team meeting because we talk all day long. We get that in the business all the time. We don't need a team meeting. We talk all day long. We're like, okay, Ashley and I talk all day long, phone call, little text, whatever. But if I'm basing my marriage on that, I looked the other day, I actually did a training on Tuesday and I was Wednesday, and I was embarrassed to look back. I had talked to my wife once on Tuesday, once. And it was probably for about 4 minutes until I got home. If we didn't turn the TV off and go sit on our back porch and like that little propane flame looking thing on the back porch and just sit there and look at each other and talk, I'm not basing my marriage on talking one time a day or a few texts. And so we've got to, can you process relationships? Yeah, process relationships. You set up a schedule today for us to be able to connect. That's processing a relationship.
Processing a relationship, absolutely.
And so we've got to sort of change our mindset to go, well, man, that seems robotic. I would rather it seem robotic, but connect, than to seem more organic, man. Let's be organic. And we're just ships passing in the night.
Can you give us an example of process and maybe take it kids? You already gave a couple examples of wife, kids, or developing friendships.
Yeah, great. Oh, wow. That's hard. So I'll tell you one of the things we do for our kids. We do something at our house called Man Up. We just made it up. It's not a program. Doesn't have a website or anything. It's just called Man Up. We realized that back in 9th grade, our first son to start 9th grade, we were like, man, this is a big wide world to just go get lost in. And if we're not like proactively training him, then what I'm saying is then Dan gets to proactively train him. The culture gets to proactively train him.
Yes.
And I don't know what Dan's going to train him. And so I think I want to sort of take ownership of that. So what we started doing was inviting, or had our son invite a few guys. And at the time we'd meet at Wendy's in the morning for biscuits. And we just did stupid stuff. Like we'd play a spitball game against Dave Thomas's head on the wall. Like we really would just do dumb stuff, like almost kindergartner weekend stuff. And then I would also always have one little lesson. And a lot of times I just use little videos. Somebody's got a good video training on this, or the make your bed video training, Admiral McCraven. Like that's a brilliant one. And so we would play some stupid game. We'd eat. I'd let a little video run for 3 or 4 minutes. And then all I did was ask questions. That's it. Just ask questions. Hey, what did you hear about that? What did you think about that? And all of our guys have always had journals that we gave them, just little cheap $2 journals with a pen. And I would have them date an empty page. And then I'd say, all right, guys, write this down. And whatever somebody said, they just write it down. And then I'd say, all right, what'd you hear in that? And they'd say something. Okay, guys, write that down. There's no curriculum. There's no nothing. But the intentionality of Tuesday night, and now it's moved to our house, where Tuesday night we'll have anywhere between 6 and 20 guys come to our house just about every Tuesday night during the school year. And I'll tell you what we did this past Tuesday night. We made paper airplanes. These are 16, 17, and 18-year-old boys. We made paper airplanes. They colored with markers the paper airplanes. And then we did a contest to see whose would fly the farthest. And the prize was nothing. They don't care. They just want to see who wins. And then after that, I was using Tim Elmore has a great series called Habitude. So I've been using some of his videos. And it was called Clean Windows. So the man up skill of the night, we always do a man up skill, change a tire, use a power tool, climb a ladder. I mean, just dumb stuff, really stupid stuff. But the man skill of the night was I spit on the window outside and they had to clean the window with a sponge and a squeegee in under 30 seconds. Like if all you have to do with teenage boys is just put a time clock on anything and they're in, they're so ready. And so that's one way that we've just started to sort of process out the intentional time with our kids and trying to grow our kids. But there's even simpler ones than that. Our mission as a family is to be a light through adventure, wisdom, and time around the table. And so prioritizing, we got 2 kids in college, prioritizing all 5 of us around the table. We have a goal for all 5 of us to be around the table at least once a month, even while the other 2 kids are off to college. Now, not everybody can do that, but that's our goal. Again, that's our playbook. But it's just looking at those sorts of things, tying things back to your mission, back to your values. But in order to do that, you got to have them written down.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, just putting a little process like that together. So simple. So on a friendship kind of thing, you could ask somebody what's important to them, what's going on these days. And then that gives you an easy mechanism to follow back up, to loop back in.
Well, and a simple process around friendship is to say, all right, once every other week, I'm having lunch with a friend. And it's the first and third Tuesday of the month. And I'm just going to let my buddies know, hey, I've got first and third Tuesday of the month set apart, and I want to go have lunch with you. I want to go have lunch with you. I want to go have lunch with you. That's a process, but it aligns. And this is where it goes into the vision and the mission and values. And we've got tools to help with all this stuff, Dan. I'm happy to tell you guys about, but families and whether they're single parent families, double parent, it doesn't matter. We've got to be able to write out and articulate the sort of the final destination of what we see out there. And also, why are we doing this? Like, what's our point? I told you our mission is to be a light through adventure, wisdom, and time around the table. Those 3 things for us are really important. So we put our time and our money and our effort into those 3 things: adventure, wisdom. So adventure is travel for us. Wisdom is books. And time around the table is literally time around the table, whether that table is a bleacher at a lacrosse game, or it's the middle section of your car sitting in a parking lot, or it's the dinner table at your home or at a restaurant. Doesn't matter where the table's at. But for us, time around the table. So we always go, our kids, all 3 of our kids right now, if you called them up, could tell you what our mission is.
Nice.
But the only reason is because we wrote it down and we constantly repeat it. And we've got a bunch of friends now they've gotten excited about this. Maria Walls, Rich and Maria Walls. She is our local elected county treasurer, and he owns a financial advisory firm. They built a whole vision, mission, values wall in their house. So they wrote out their vision, they wrote out their mission, they wrote out their values, and she's got certain things. And what's super cool is her mission is written on a mirror. So as you're reading the mission, you're looking at yourself.
Nice.
And I was like, this is brilliant. Like, this is they're a typical, just middle-class family living right here in a typical little town. And they're not, they're not overly, they're unique to me, but like to the world, they're just the Walls family. And
Yes.
so anybody can do this if you make the time to do it. It's the intentionality to do it. It has nothing to do with the silver bullet. There's no special sauce. We've got templates that can help, but it's really just there to help ease the burden of having to think about that side of it. What you or I cannot help with is for Dan and his family to actually make time to do it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, you can tap into existing systems. So one simple thing could be, hey, there's already a meeting that's already happening. You like what's going on there. I like what's going on there. Hey, you want to go there together?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want to meet at the place.
Yeah.
Whether we pick each other up or whether we just show up together. Hey,
Yeah.
I've got a system now built in where I get to see Scott every week.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Are you going to be at the thing? Yeah, I'm going to be at the thing.
I'm going to be at the thing. You mentioned Brian McRae. He runs Mastermind St. Louis,
Yep.
right? And so that's a thing that, I don't know, 100, 200 people don't need to work to build. It's already built.
Already built. Yeah.
So just tell your friends, hey, let's go to that thing. We did this 2 weeks ago at the International Builders Show. About 75% of our clients are contractors. And so I called one of our big theme this year is flourish. And one of the sub themes of that is cross-pollination. We want our clients to talk to each other, not just us. And so I was speaking at the IBS, and we sent a message to all our clients. Hey, I'm heading down to Orlando to speak at the IBS. Why don't you guys come down there? And so we had about 9 or 10 of our clients down at the International Builders Show, and they were able to cross connect by doing that. They didn't have to put on the show. They didn't have to, set anything up. They bought a ticket, they got a name tag, and they showed up at the same spot. That's processing out a relationship.
Yes. Yeah. So it's simple. It doesn't have to be that hard. Just take some intentionality and, it doesn't even have to be your own idea. Go grab somebody else's.
That's
hey,
right.
I'm having problems with something. Can you help?
Yeah.
Here's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Hey, could you invite somebody to the thing that you already go to? Yeah, I could do that. When?
Yeah.
When can you invite them? I don't know. Well, when's the thing? It's on Saturday.
Yeah.
You think Monday's enough time? Yeah, I can invite them Monday before noon. Done. There's a system.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Set a little reminder on your phone or calendar or something like that. Took awesome. 1 whole minute to come up with the idea.
Yeah. That's what my kids and I were having this conversation last week. Ideas are really inexpensive. The implementation of the idea is what's really costly. I forget who said this. I've got the book. I'll have to find it later, but the quote is this: vision without implementation is hallucination. Vision without implementation is hallucination. So in other words, the idea without doing anything with it, you might as well just hallucinate. It's about the same thing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's vision without implementation is dreaming.
Dreaming. That's right. And dreaming's good. Yeah. Dreaming's good. But the back value of dreaming is when you can take something that you dreamt about and it's got teeth to it. But you got to put in the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And as Christians, we've maybe heard the story about, hey, God, save me from this flood. I'm going to drown.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, let me die, God. We didn't see the boat, the helicopter, the warning, get out of your house and get out of here because it's going to flood. I guess I missed all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta look, listen, and ask questions. So asking questions is just such a huge thing. If you can stop and ask a question.
Yeah.
Such as earlier we were talking about, where'd this come from? Where'd this idea come from? How'd we get here?
Yeah.
Well, the world, you're talking about training your kids. Not only are you training your kids, you've taken responsibility for their group of guys.
Yeah.
Am I going to let the world teach them how to be men, or am I going to teach them how to be men? I'll take that one. I'd rather do it myself. That is huge. That is so cool. Not only that, you get to know all your kids' friends and get to see who's influencing them. And it's a big responsibility, but at the same time, it sounds like the implementation side is super easy for you.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, don't get me wrong. There are Tuesdays that I'm like, because Tuesdays are like my heavy coaching day, and it's nonstop. Starts early with our team, and you get there, and those guys usually show up about 6:37, and they're coming in like teenagers. I mean, it's blaring, the trucks are loud, everything's loud, and you just but when you're done, you're like, man, I'm glad we did that. Really glad we did that.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of real estate agents, and they do open houses on Saturdays or Sundays. Like the worst part of my weekend is like the 5 minutes before I've got to pack everything up and go to the open house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once I'm at the open house, it's great.
It's
I love
awesome.
it.
That's right.
But having to break away from family, throwing the football, baseball, whatever it might be, is like
It's hard.
That's a hard feeling. Yes,
Yeah.
but I'm glad once I did the activity, and just like that one, once the night finalizes, no matter how it started, your feelings, you feel great about, what happens. So
Yeah.
super cool. So we're talking a little bit of a process and system. So let's talk value, mission, and vision.
Yeah. So I would say this is simple. It does take time. But let me just define the three, and I think that'll be helpful.
Okay.
A vision here's our perception of what these things are. For most people, a vision is a short, pithy sentence going, hey, we want to be the world's best insurance provider among all nations and all peoples everywhere all the time. And you're like, okay, that inspires nothing, right?
Right.
And then we go, yeah, but you haven't read our mission yet. Our mission is for all people, all time, all people everywhere. We want to inspire great people with great insurance. You're like, well, you just said the same thing, but in a different order, than the vision. And then the values, this is where we really sort of let this break down. We go, yeah, I value, especially Christians, I value the Bible. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I value, the way that lumber is framed. If not, I can't sit up on the second story room right now. But I want to know, what do you value that maybe I don't? Of course, as a Christian, you value the Bible. I hope you do. I hope you value prayer and all that stuff. And we've got to stop thinking of values as these sort of cliched givens. Those sorts of values are kind of the low barrier to entry. Like if you're not valuing that, then we have a different connection. And so the most obvious values that people do are things like excellence, integrity, respect, and responsibility, which, by the way, are 3 of the 4 core values for Enron. You can go back and look those up. And so they're cliche. They don't mean anything. And so you start to look around and you go, all right, what are the values for you? Well, one of our values is the table. It's one of our values. When we're around a table, man, we know we can play games, we can eat, we can hang out, we can laugh. We're going tonight. Oh my gosh, we're going tonight to my daughter is in a relationship that seems to be heading that way. And we're going to go meet the parents of this guy for the first time in a year,
Wow.
First time ever. And that's happening tonight. Like my wife and I are about to get in a car for a 5-hour drive to go up there, have dinner, and drive right back. And so, those are sorts of things. But why are we doing it? Because it's around the table. We'll make crazy concessions to go get around the table. And that's important to us. That idea of adventure is important to us. Our business core values are big wins. Work is faith. Learning and implementing. These are things that are a little bit unique. One of our core values in the business is simply ... write it down. We value people writing it. I've seen you've been writing notes the whole time.
Yes.
And that's a value of ours, And so we'll tell people, I told you earlier in Man Up, we have them write it down. That's one of our core values. So what is a value? And now let me explain what these things are. A vision is a snapshot of a future destination, and it needs to be really detailed. So I don't just see myself going to Dallas. I see myself going to a mega city in an arid environment that's surrounded by rooftops, has this incredible downtown environment with sort of a cowboy culture. I'm going into detail about this because if I just say, and you have no context on Dallas, and I say, hey, come to Dallas with me, you're going to go, why? I mean, it's the first question you ask. But now I'm going to give you texture around it. I'm going to give you context around it. And the more I do it, now you get to make a decision. Does that sound enticing to you or not? And Habakkuk 2, God's having a conversation with the prophet Habakkuk. And God says, hey, write the vision down so that those who read it may run. Now, notice in the verse, it does not say which direction they run. Some will run towards it. Some will run away from it. We're seeing this play out in Russia and Ukraine right now. Vladimir Putin has given a vision for Russia. And some people are running towards that vision, and some people are running away from that vision.
Yes.
But the vision is cutting. It's cutting. It divides. And so that's a vision. Is a future snapshot. Is a snapshot of the future of your blank family, your business, your whatever. The values, and I'll come back to mission in a minute, the values are the curbs along the side of the road of the highway that you're going to take to get to that future destination. So whatever future destination you drew a picture of way out there, we'll call it Dallas. The curbs along the side of the highway to get to Dallas, those curbs are made up of your core values. They keep you in line. They keep you in line. Now, there are times, Dan, you can jump those curbs. Like you can go outside of your core values. You just need to understand what's the consequence, what's the cost if you do that. So if you're on a back highway in Texas and you jump the curb of that highway, there will be some damage, but it's going to be minimal, pasture land and all that stuff. If you go from my house to Hilton Head, you have to go over a bridge. If you jump those curbs, you'll die. And that's the cost of jumping that curb. And so you just need to understand there are times that you can violate your core values, but you need to understand what the cost of that is. Then that brings us to the middle. Why are you going to Dallas? That's your mission statement. And so Dallas is the vision of where I'm going. My values are the curbs that take me there. So I'll give you an example. Tonight or this afternoon, if I just did it in short, I'm saying I'm going to Raleigh. I'm going to Raleigh. Okay. Well, does Dan go with me to Raleigh? Well, let me tell you what Raleigh is. I'm going to an East Coast city that's sort of a little bit of a Silicon Valley tech hub of the East Coast in a beautiful area that's surrounded to its north by mountains, to its east by coastland. It's got pine trees everywhere, still got some small village-like areas around it and that sort of thing. And it's made up of some really, really nice people. You're like, okay, I'm intrigued. And our values to get there are stay within the boundaries of I-95. We're going to stay on I-95 until we hit this other highway and get over to Raleigh, but we're going to stay on that road. Those are our core values. And we're going to go this speed limit. Why are you going? Because I'm going to meet my potential in-laws for the first time. Ooh, now it just got real, right? Raleigh was like, okay, that's cool. Values are like, okay, I got it. So you don't run off the road and you don't get stopped and all that stuff. But the why are you going? Well, this could be our in-laws coming up. Oh, that's visceral. That's emotional at that point. And so I could give you a future snapshot of our business or of our family, right? So we've got that written out too. Future snapshot of our family. We've talked to our kids about this. I could give you our values for our family. But if you ask me why are we doing all this? Because we want to be a light through adventure, wisdom, and time around the table. Oh, okay. And so that's the difference between the vision, mission, and values. Vision is long form, a lot of thought, a lot of time. Values are short form, less than 5, preferably, but unique words, unique things to you that are not unique to us. One of our dear friends, one of the things they value is an intentional spontaneity, I think is their word, intentional spontaneity. And it's cool because one of the spouses struggles with intentionality. The other spouse struggles with spontaneity. And so they put those two things together and now they go on spontaneous trips, but that have a purpose to them. And it's neat to see how they've sort of invested their money into that.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So vision. Everybody's got one. Most people actually don't.
Yeah.
What are some things to think about there? I know that you had an interview with Cam Harold. He wrote a big book on vision, and quite a few people wrote a book on vision. Some good buddies of mine that are high level, blah, blah, blah. I said, man, I'm having trouble with vision. He says, I'll read Cam Harold's book. And I'm like, oh, is it the greatest? He goes, oh, it's the greatest by far. And I read it and I went, huh, okay. A lot of great philosophy and theory here. But my takeaway from the book, nothing. It didn't advance me one bit.
Yeah. We don't overthink it. Sit down with your spouse, sit down with your kids and young kids too, and ask basic questions. Hey, what do you think you want to be 20 years from now? Where do you think you want to be 20 years from now? We asked our kids, do you think you want to be married? And they answered, yeah. All 3 of them said this in their teenage years. And so when discussions came up, I'll never forget, my son was thinking, like Major League Baseball and all that kind of stuff. And I said, yeah, you could go do that. We could, get you in all the travel stuff and blah, blah, blah. You could do that. And I said, but one thing I want to remind you of is you wrote down in your vision that you would like to be married one day. And I said, I don't want to squash your baseball dreams. Like, we'll support you in whatever you do. She said, you want to be married. And why don't we go look at the divorce rate of Major League Baseball players? And we looked it up. It's out there. You can go look it up. To my best recall, it was in the 80 percentile.
Whoa.
80% of baseball players are divorced. And I said, man, we'll cheer you on. We'll wear your number. We'll do all that kind of stuff. We'll put you in touch with agents and everything else. But you said you want to be married. And I'm not saying you can't if you're a Major League Baseball player, but I will tell you it's a lot harder to do that. So it was a sobering conversation. Didn't squash his dreams. He kept playing baseball for a while, and then it petered out after a while and went on to something else. Now he's a great runner. And so he's got a different form of that vision. But that's how we sort of align. But just asking basic questions of what do you want our family to look like in 10 years? We asked that question. We asked our kids, what do you want mom and dad to be when we're grandparents of your kids? How do you want us to act? And so just answer those questions. Just write as many questions down as you're curious. As parents, we're all curious about what our kids think about things. So just ask those questions. Write them down on a sheet of paper. Review them every 2 months together around the table.
That's great. I love that. What we did when we were working with that was we had different faith, family, fitness, fun, travel.
Yeah.
And
yeah. You
we
can
just-
do the, what is it? The 7 F's, I think, finances, faith, fun, family. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
All that.
what's important to us?
Just put a little framework together. Again, it's not the tool. Cam Harold's book, my book, your book, somebody else's book. It's not the tool. It's taking the tool and doing something with it. That's what it is. So not until anybody listening to this podcast actually puts time on their calendar to sit down and have this conversation, does any of this stuff matter.
Yes. Yeah. So where are we going? Where are we going?
Where are we going? That's what you're
You're
answering.
talking to those two business owners, 5 million, 12 million. Hey, where are you going?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Now they can tell you.
You got mission, vision, values? Oh yeah, absolutely. But where are you going?
Yeah.
I don't know. And now you've worked with them and you've got them to that point. But it's amazing when I ask men, hey, where are you going? Where's your family going? What direction are you going? Where do you hope to get to? And oftentimes they go, what do you mean? Like, life's good. Like, what does that mean? Life's good. Well, we're getting by. Oh, okay. Is that how you want to do is survive? Is that the goal?
Yeah.
Well, it is, right? I don't know if that's what you want. If that's what you want is to just merely literally survive, not have any ambitions or directions, or they go, huh, all right. Well, what could it be? I don't know. Let's talk about it. What would you like? When you look out, and again, when you look out 5, 10, 20 years, advance your kid's age. What does that look like? Put 10, 15 years on your kid. Put 30 years onto your marriage. I asked a guy that question once and I go, and he paused for the longest time. And I say, hey man, I got a different question for you. When you look out at your marriage that far out, is your current wife in that picture at all? And he stopped and he says, actually, no, that's why I couldn't answer that question. And so he wanted to do all this other stuff. And I said, whoa, we're talking about all this other stuff. Like, this one seems like it could be a really important thing to work on right now, as opposed to advancing the ball in your business. Like, unless you're okay with that.
Yeah. Right.
He says, wow, I guess I got to figure out if I'm going to stay married or not. Like, it was a business conversation. It had nothing to do with personal, but man, did it shift quickly.
Wow.
And I wasn't expecting it because I'd known the guy for quite some time. I figured that was just a given. I was just asking a dumb question.
Yeah.
But turned out it was pretty pointed. So
pretty powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the simplicity of that. Ask your kids, ask your wife. Simple questions.
Yeah, that's right.
But put some specificity behind it.
That's
as
right.
Opposed to general. Hey, where do you want to go? I don't know. Hey, where do you want to eat tonight, honey? I don't know.
Yeah, but really having those conversations.
How do you solve that one at your house, by the way? So you're going out on your intentional date night once a week. Hey, where do you want to eat tonight, Scott?
Yeah, we go through the same. In our house, usually Ashley she more has a vision of where we want to go for dinner and things like that. And we kind of sort of also have a vibe around food. We're like, not feeling that. What if we did this? And so we usually come to grips. But at the end of the day, we also don't really care. We went to a horrible, horrible, horrible restaurant 2 weeks ago, and it was really bad food. And we knew it. It's one of these national chains, and we should have never gone. We were in a different town, and we just sort of wanted easy. And but when we left, we were like, we didn't care. We got to sit around the table, and it was good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We did a whole podcast episode around where do you want to eat, honey?
That's great.
And the point was somebody needs to take some leadership to pick a place.
Yeah.
As
yeah.
opposed to going back and forth for an hour and a half,
For an hour and a half,
deciding you're both hungry
wasting
and
that time.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like how much more will your wife appreciate if you just literally call something out and say, hey, here's what we're doing, honey. We're going to leave at 5:30. We should get to the restaurant by 5:45. I know you like steaks and also pasta. The restaurant's got both of those. Sound good?
That's great.
Can you be ready by 5:30? Babysitter's coming over at 5. Yeah, absolutely.
That's encouraging. Yeah.
Yes. Just having a plan. Earlier, you mentioned doing a quarterly overnight and then also taking some time away. Remind us again, for those that missed the very beginning or didn't know that it would necessarily be relevant. How old are your kids now?
Yeah, now they're 20, 18 and 17. But this is also something that we did when they were younger as well.
So people automatically, whoa, no, that's not fair. His kids are older. So you did this when they were younger. How did that work when they were younger? What was the
usually
system around it?
Because some people are thinking, well, babysitters and all that stuff. What we did is we found like-minded families who were like, hey, we'll take your kids and come spend the night with us. And, they're buddies. And so they come spend the night with us. You guys go do your thing. And then our kids will come spend the night with you and you go do so again, be creative. I'm not saying you got to go to a $300 a night hotel and have a $200 a night meal and pay, another $300 for babysitters. And that's not what I'm talking about. It's, if you live near a park, then if your kids can go hang out and sleep over at another kid's house and have a little 7-year-old sleepover, then you go do that. I get everybody's in a different space. Here's my point. Don't do what we do. Get the spirit of what we do and go figure out a way to do it in your own context.
Yeah, we were interviewing J. Warner Wallace, who wrote Cold Case Christianity, FBI homicide detective. And
oh, wow.
Then he decided to investigate whether Jesus was real or not. Anyway, super cool. At the end of that, I was like, hey, throw a challenge out for the guys. And he goes, quarterly, do an overnight. I was like, oh my goodness. I'm like, how's that work? Yeah. And I tried applying that in my own life. And I'm like, hey, honey, we'll go ahead. She's like, oh, it can't happen. The babysitters. And I'm like, well, here's the list of 10 people that all could fill that role. And, it took a while, but now it's starting, it took a while to get it started, but now it's started. And at the beginning of the year, I sent a note out to 5 different couples that we're friends with. And I'm like, hey, you cool with trading some overnights? I'd like to. This is my intention for the year. Yeah. And in order to do that, I've got to figure out a childcare solution. My kids don't necessarily care for babysitters, but they love their friends and they love you. Would you be a part of helping me out with my plan?
That's awesome.
And if you'd like to do something similar, we'd be glad to reciprocate, but not obligated if you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And 4 out of the 5 said, that sounds great.
That's awesome, man.
One of them said there could be challenges with that, but I'm like,
it's okay. You tried. It would have been 0 if you didn't ask.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. That's exactly right. So it was pretty cool saying, hey, listen, honey, I've got 4 different families and the kids she goes, huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like awesome. Now we can't use that as the excuse not to do it.
Yeah. I think that's probably the big takeaway, Dan, is don't focus so much on the how. Or the specificity of the how. Focus just on go to the calendar, set it, and start moving towards that point.
Yes.
And I think that's it. And ask normal questions. Be a human being. Just ask normal questions and answer those questions and write them down in a book and go back to that book on a regular basis. And you'll start to see vision and mission and values forming. One of the big quotes we talk about all the time is you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I forget, Jim Rohn or somebody said it. And so we preach it all the time at our Man Up on Tuesday night. In fact, I just had him write it down again this past Tuesday night. One of my sons is a camp counselor, and they do those bios at their camp counselor. And, each of the counselors sort of writes out a snippet. Well, guess what was in his snippet? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And he starts writing. I'm like, oh my, like it's stuck. It's stuck.
Yes.
And so that's why it's not don't have to ask this question. Ask curious questions, write down the answers, review them on a regular basis. there's your 3-step process to coming up with the vision, mission, values.
That's great. So you have obviously Business on Purpose, fantastic company, great marketing, all that type thing. There are some guys that are business owners that listen. There are definitely a lot of guys that work inside of a business
Yeah.
that might not be on purpose, and they might wish that the organization they're in. So, and then guys that this doesn't apply to whatsoever, that's okay. The things we learn in business apply in our families. The things we learn in families apply at work. The things we learn in our faith life and through the Bible also apply in all the other areas. So wherever we do our learning at, let's apply it in the other areas as well.
Yeah.
But this specifically for the guys that are involved in businesses that could use some help with mission, vision, and values and being on purpose, and then some systems and processes, because you're fantastic at it. How do they get in contact with you? What's the type of organization that you help? That type of stuff.
Well, I'll tell you who specifically is our sweet spot are business owners and key leaders between 2 and 50 employees. Once they get beyond that, that's more of a sort of a corporate bureaucratic consultant. Anything under that obviously is incubation, and we work best when somebody has 2 to 50 employees. And we work in a lot of different platforms. Like I said, 75% of our folks are in the contracting construction space. But we've got lawyer clients and medical clients, and we've got a variety of different things. Insurance, we actually have 3 or 4 clients that are insurance companies. And so that's sort of the who. But the probably the best way is we've got the coolest little diagnostic tool that can be really enlightening, and it's called our Healthy Owner Assessment. Whether you're an owner or a key leader, you can go to it. If you just go to mybusinessonpurpose.com/healthy. So mybusinessonpurpose.com/healthy, and go take the assessment. And that'll actually really open your eyes, if you own the business, to the health of the existing business. And if you don't, if you're a key leader of the business, then it'll sort of open your eyes to that as well. So you know how to have a candid conversation about the health of the business based on the questions that you're asking. Pay attention to the questions that it asks as you go through it. So that's one place to start. The other, if anybody does need help with their vision, mission, values for their family, we actually a few years ago put all of that stuff into a little course. I mean, it's dirt cheap. It's like 50 something bucks for the whole thing, and we're not making money on it. It's just sort of paying for the hosting for it. But if you go to createafamilyvision.com, so createafamilyvision.com, and it's up there. It's a great little course, 10 modules. We actually encourage parents to do it with their kids, unless they're like super, super small. But get crayon. In fact, right through that door right there, I've got our whole sheet that we did markers and crayons. And even I mean, I've got a bunch of doodles on there too. And so get markers, crayons, take you a couple of hours. You can break it up, and it's in these little modules. I talk about unicorns. So I try to make it as kid friendly as I can, but not lose the adults either. And so anyway, that if you need help with it, it's there. I mean, I sort of gave you the short version, that if you do that too, it will be equally as effective. But if you need a little help, you can go there and get it.
Wow, that's awesome. So I had no idea that existed.
Yeah.
I was thinking, hey, we could check out some of the business stuff and apply it to business, but then also check out the business stuff and apply it to family.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the business tools work just as well for
100%. And they would. Yeah.
Good.
But start there. And there's, as you can imagine, a lot of crossover. That's why I felt like we needed to do it. But both of those places, if you're an owner, you definitely need to go take that healthy assessment now, so that you can sort of get, we're in a new reality. And so you need to start setting the business up for this new reality that we've got extended schedules and all sorts of stuff that's coming. But from a family standpoint, it's kind of cool to have a little guided focus if you're willing to put the time down and do it.
And have you got another one, /mission or /vision or something?
Let me make sure it's still up. We had mybusinessonpurpose.com/vision, but let me make sure that's up, because I can give you another URL. I don't want to over URL you, but okay. Yeah. So if you go to mybusinessonpurpose.com/vision, then you can get
I jumped on that one this morning, and I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. This is a nice little framework for work, but also a nice little framework. Some of them don't directly apply to family, maybe. However, you can just substitute a word in there. You can see what's missing.
That's exactly
sports, or, school, or, whatever. But it's like, oh, cool. You can just replace words and go. Just a
Yeah.
nice little simple templated place to think and put your ideas out there. And, you know, family can see it and family can add to it and all that
Yeah.
type of thing.
It's
So,
awesome. It's a lot of fun.
and we didn't even talk about your business book, Let Your
Yeah.
Business Burn.
Yeah. Let Your Business Burn. I wrote that, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. And now how we really push a lot of it is our clients, they actually buy it and give it to their new hires and just say, hey, read this. This is what we do. And so the subtitle, Stop Putting Out Fires, Discover Purpose, and Build a Business That Matters. And it's a ton of stories, pack it with a ton of stories, but then is highly templated. And so all the templates are in the back of the book. And I walk straight through, if you're a business owner, just to literally walk through the book. I read E-Myth and I was like, this book is amazing, but it doesn't tell me what to do next.
Right.
And so I thought, well, I'll write a book that tells you what to do next. And so that's what it is.
Oh, that's fantastic. I've got to connect you to one of the guys that's been on the podcast before, a guy named Robert Teschner, and he's deeply tied into E-Myth, and he used to be the instructor for the Top Gun Academy.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I'm sorry, not the lead instructor. So he ran all the training for all of the fighter pilots. And at one time he was the #1 fighter pilot in the world also, but he's dialed into the E-Myth in a big way. And I love that book as well. It's fantastic. System, process.
That's right. That's right.
You want results, you got to work a system, process, and have some accountability around it.
Yeah. That's good.
So I always like to allow, if there's something else you want to add for the audience, and then behind that, a challenge that you can throw out to the guys so that they can implement in a week. So we throw out podcasts every week, and they can listen to one this week, do the challenge this week before they listen to the next podcast.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think there's, I'll make this really, really simple, is go to your calendar and set 30 minutes to sit down with a member of your household and have this vision conversation. I mean, that's it. That's it. It doesn't need to be complex. Set the time, go do it.
That's great. So systems wise, we've got something called Sunday Night Ritual. So every week on Sunday, my wife and kids, we just talk about what the week looks like going forward, and, substitute different topics. It's not very long. It's a 5-minute conversation right next to the calendar.
Wow. I love that.
And that way you don't have to be,
but you've said it. And that's why I say the challenge is just set it and go do it.
You don't have to be ad hoc during the week. Hey, honey, did you pick up the kids, or is it my day? Or, whatever it is. Like, it's already planned. It's already taken care of.
Set it and go do it.
See where the problems may be. And so, this simple exercise, 30 minutes, talk to your wife and family about the vision. Maybe do the 30 minutes with your wife first, and then bring that into the kids, after that. But however you guys want to do it, brilliant, simple thing to do. And how do you know where you're going if you haven't put the pin on the map?
That's right. Yeah.
So you should be on purpose with that for sure. Little add-on story. I heard you share a quick story about the lead marksman in the world.
Oh yeah.
Can you share that story? Because this is even better than a pin on the map, or if you don't tell the airplane where to go and you're not paying attention to coordinates, you go to the wrong place. I love this story. Yeah.
So it was and you can go look this up, but it's an Olympic story of a shooter. I forget what they call the marksman shooting. And this guy, best in the world and all this kind of stuff. And all he's got to do is just hit the target. That's it. He doesn't even have to hit a bullseye. Just hit the target and he'll win. I think it was an Olympic gold medal. And so he lines up, goes through his routine, does his breathing, the whole thing, shoots, fires, hits the bullseye. Boom. And he's out of medal contention because he realized he was aiming at the wrong target. And so he bullseyed the wrong target. And that's a lot of what we do. We're bullseying. We're bullseying. Yeah, we're bullseying Facebook. We're bullseying, scrolling Twitter. We're bullseying, being lost in our email. We're bullseying all those things. Like, we're nailing those things, and we're just aimed at the wrong target.
Had he just observed and looked for the number on his target, he'd have won. But instead, he saw one lined up, took care of it, and
just look around,
focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So guys, that's what the vision is picking your target and going for it. So, well, I appreciate your time greatly, Scott. Had no idea about createafamilyvision.com, but I'm glad
Yeah.
we covered that because that can be a super, super useful tool and help lots and lots of men.
Yeah.
So,
Spread that around. We've heard I was in a restaurant literally 2 weeks ago, and my wife introduced me to somebody, a couple, and she turned to her husband and goes, "Hey, you remember the family vision thing we did? That's the guy on the video." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like they went through, like they wrote it out. And the guy goes, "Yeah, we took a trip 2 weeks ago. And that's the reason we took the trip, was because of the," and I'm like, that was
it's
it, man.
awesome
I'm
when
so
you see the
excited.
impact. It's
Yeah.
awesome when you
So
see the
excited.
impact. So yeah, you never know until
Yeah.
something like
So
that
go
shows
check that
up.
out. That
So
can be helpful.
well, fantastic. I appreciate your time so much. We'll share your links on all the show notes and everything. And guys, I appreciate you checking Scott out. He's certainly a guy that you can put in your five people to hang around.
Mm.
And yeah, stick some reviews of the show or whatever you like. We appreciate those greatly. We always crave feedback. And Scott got to get incredibly blessed with seeing that at a dinner and
100%. Yeah.
seeing that made an impact on somebody. So
Mm.
guys, we will let you run, but be on purpose and make an impact. Thanks, guys.
Mm.
Catch you next week.
It's awesome.